And off we go.
Oh, I love it.
Welcome to the Growth Hacking Culture, the podcast for leaders and innovators who are not just building businesses, but building movements. I'm your host, Ivan Palomino, and today we are tackling one of the most persistent and costly challenges in the corporate world, the massive gap between a brilliant strategy and its execution. These numbers, statistics that we know, people say that between 70 to 90% of strategies fail, not because they are bad ideas, but because of poor implementation. Well, I have seen it live. Companies are losing billions in wasted resources, missed market opportunities, and burn out teams, which is the part that I really, really care. The
Yeah.
problem isn't the what, but the how. My guest today is a leader who lives and breathes this challenge. Dr. Apollo Emeka is an expert in leadership, strategy, and organizational culture, and his work provides a powerful framework to turning vision into reality. We're going to dive into the practical step leaders can take, the critical role of self awareness, and the true meaning of accountability. How to build a culture where everyone feels ownership about the results. We are going to explore why coaching might not be the silver bullet we think it is. Ha, it was a trick question that I kept for Apollo. So let's stop talking about strategy and start talking about execution. Dr. Apollo Emeka, welcome to the show. Lovely to have you
Hey,
here.
thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here.
Apollo, I know that before this podcast, we have been discussing about your personal journey,
Yeah.
and I find it quite amazing and somehow similar to my personal journey. You are now living in outside of United States. You have
Yeah.
been working for the FBI. You have done a doctorate. You have been. I mean, it almost look like you are a survivor who every time comes back. The guy who never lets go. Whatever is your goal, you are going to be grabbing it and just going for it. Is that true, or I completely misunderstood your personal journey?
Oh, wow. Okay, so am I a survivor that, I think survivors are almost always on the edge of something bad happening, but they manage to, like if you think about like the TV show Survivor or somebody surviving on an island, it's like something bad could be lurking around the corner all the time, but they manage to just escape or to just survive the situation. And the where I strive to live is way ahead of the danger, way ahead of being in survival situations. I don't want to be in a survival situation. I want to be comfortable. So I think when you look at my life, at the resume and all of that, it almost um, it almost looks fake because of the things that I've done. But I've been able to accomplish all of these things because I I didn't want to be in survival situations. I wanted to be in situations where I was comfortable, where I was thriving, where I was set up for success and in a position to win. So I'm always looking for the opportunity to make a big decision and move to that big decision um, so I can stay out of survival situations.
I love that. I love that. But and it's a matter of perspective. Like
Tell me.
thinking just loudly, like being a minority. Sorry,
Hmm.
I brought that topic. You and
Let's
me,
go.
brown people. I had
That's
to bring
right.
it all to the topic. It's not always easy, right? I mentioned to you, I grew up in Switzerland. I was 15. You come in a world where it's highly dominated by white people, and you
Hmm.
have to adapt in order to thrive. So for instance, in my case, when I look back to the full life, I'm similar to you. I look at it in a positive manner, but there has been
Yeah.
moments where our uniqueness has made things a little bit harder than the average American or the average Swiss person.
Hmm. Hmm.
But is that
Hmm.
true or not?
It's hard for me to speak about Switzerland, but I know that in America, there America was born with this idea of freedom for all.
Mhm.
Meanwhile, at the same time, uh, there was the eradication of Native people. happening at the time that the Declaration of Independence was signed in America. There was the enslavement of Black people by
Mm,
people who signed this Declaration of Independence, claiming freedom for all. There was the disenfranchisement of women, and there was the othering of white folks from non-European from that were not from England, right?
yeah.
And so there, uh, America has been this kind of expansion of rights over time, right? To Black people, to women, to other, all types of folks. The gay marriage, right? Like it's been an expansion of rights to be a little bit closer to um, the words that were written in the Declaration of Independence a couple hundred years ago.
Mm.
And so I think what has happened is no doubt there have been these systemic inequalities and they persist. But the thing that I think has um, the thing that I think is really challenging for people of color and women is that we almost don't realize how much better things have gotten. And so there is still an instinct to try to outwork, to try to not stand out, to try to, be kind of like, uh, yeah, to kind of not make waves, to go get all those degrees and get the certifications and get the promotions and do all the things when really there is a lot more space for us and a lot more desire to see new ideas and new kind of cultural perspectives. So I think that it's very true that even 20 years ago, having a non-traditional background was something that was, weird and undesirable, and you had to go get all these things to make up for it, degrees and whatnot. I got a doctorate, right? I got a doctorate because I did not want somebody to say, we can't take you seriously because you're uneducated, right? And so there we do these things, and we jump through these hoops to make up for some aspect of our identity and our past. And I think it's a habit that we need to break moving forward.
Hmm. Apollo, what you say, I totally feel it. It is, but when it's very human to think that now that I got all these rights, I want more. This is already deserved. Like
Yeah,
once
yeah,
I have my protection, and we want more because we own it. We are humans too, and so it's very natural as a human being to continue this direction of striving for more, not even better, it's for more in general, which goes into a personal sense of we have a purpose, like for instance, to get recognized, not because
yeah.
our color of skin, but because we know more shit than the others. For instance,
Hmm.
I'm taking my case,
Yeah,
and that drives us to us also a little bit more closer to our conversation about this accountability because it starts with us. We see an image of ourselves in the future that where we are completely human but without the colors, without our difference, our beliefs, and we want to get there, and we start creating this level of discipline in order to become better, like staying in the right country, learning
yeah,
more stuff. I wouldn't have imagined, man, that I have even become good at half coding with AI and stuff like that. 2 years ago, I wouldn't have thought about it, and I have
yeah,
become just because I didn't I wanted to be impaired with other people around about what is going on in the world. So and I want to discuss more about this sense of accountability because at the individual level, it is about having a purpose, having an image that we have about ourselves. But in organizations, it seems that is uh, a challenge, a challenge
in what
to
way?
have this sense of accountability where we can translate this strategy or vision that the organization has about that themselves into a tangible day-to-day execution. Have you how would you define, in fact, these problems that organizations are having to translate this image or strategy into real things that you execute in a day to day in order to become, for an organization, a better organization?
Yeah, it's interesting that we talk about this inequality and barriers and things like that, and that brought up for me the Declaration of Independence. Um, I'm really glad that that the founding fathers of America wrote the Declaration of Independence in the way that they did. Again, it was contradictory to the actions and behaviors of the time, but they said that this is essentially what we're creating and what we're striving for. And Abraham Lincoln, in order to form a more perfect union, right? Like it's always a thing that we're striving for and that we're practicing. And so the Declaration of Independence was a wholly unrealistic document, but it was written with a vision that was so big that we can still reference it hundreds of years later and say, oh, you know what? Actually, these folks need freedom too. These
Mm,
folks need rights too. Because look at this document and the way that it's written. Look at our Constitution and the way that it's written. And I think that had they said, hey, we believe that all people are created equal, except for Native Americans and women and Black people and Irish and Italians. And right, like if that was the way that the Declaration of Independence had been written, there's no way that America would have progressed to be, this kind of to attract all of these different cultures and to advance rights. And so if I'm going to take that parallel and I'm going to put it up to organizations, I think that it's very rare that organizations write a Declaration of Independence style document.
yeah.
They're more often writing something that's feasible and that is realistic, and that makes it one hard for people to get excited about it,
Mm,
and it makes it hard to measure your current activities off of it and say, oh, wait a minute. You know what? This vision is so big that I can tell that what we are currently doing, there is no way we can keep doing what we're currently doing and get to this vision, right? And most organizations are not writing strategy in the way that is aspirational and that lights people up.
mm. What would you say is missing when you write the strategy? Is it the human aspect that can be inspirational that I feel related to this strategy? Because I don't care that to be the number one product sold in Europe. I maybe I care more about the impact that I'm going to have to society and stuff like that. Do you think that is that like what is it for me that is missing in most of these organizations?
So yes, I do think that that's what's missing. I think, okay, so if you do a traditional strategic plan, what do you have? You've got vision, right? It's like our company's North Star. You've got values, which say, hey, these are the guardrails that we're going to think about and the things that we're going to try to uphold and strive for in pursuing the stuff that we pursue. And then we've got mission. This is more of a nuts and bolts operational, here are the things that we do, here's who we do them for, and here's the impact that it has, right? So we've got these high kind of guiding principles, strategic elements, and then we'll have, objectives that say, here are the things we actually want to do in the next 3 to 5 years. And here are the strategies that we think are going to that we think are going to be necessary in order to get there, right? And what happens is you've got all of these disparate elements. So we've got like 5 things right there, right? So
Mm,
now when you go try to translate this as an individual, let's say you're the head of a department or the head of a team, you have to now reconcile 5 different things against each other to figure out what it is that you're going to do. And the human brain is really bad at multitasking. We can hold 4 things in our brain plus or minus one, and men are worse at it than women are. Okay. And that's scientific. So when we've got these strategic plans that have 5 values, right? That we got to try to hold into our brains, these 5 values. We've got these 6 strategies, these 6 objectives, and each one of those has 2 strategies or whatever. And so we've got now that's 10 other things. So we've got 15 things. Now we've got a mission that says who we're going to serve and who we're. So like really, when you look at a strategic plan, it's it looks organized. And when you go section by section, it looks like cool, maybe heartwarming, maybe inspirational. But really, what you've done is you've created like 37 things that someone has to consider in order to make a decision moving forward. And that can be paralyzing.
Yes.
So, what is missing is I don't believe in goals. I believe in decisions. Now, goals, the brain doesn't even register goals as a unique and special thing. The brain registers goals as like side quests, as the things that you'll do if you have time after you're done fulfilling your actual decisions. So this is why when I work with folks, they come in with goals, but they leave with decisions. So we bring goals in, and then we say, okay, how do we turn this into a decision? It's by doing exactly what you just said. So rather than saying we're going to be the number one in the region or the world, or rather than saying we're going to grow revenue by 20%, we say, what I like to do is I like to ask people, hey, we grow revenue by 20%. And let's say I hop on a Zoom with you a year from now, and you have done it. You have grown by 20%. How fulfilled are you going to be on a scale of 1 to 10? 1, you are regretful and resentful. And 10, you are like over the moon, excited and fulfilled. So if you just told me like the revenue thing for you would be like a what on that 1 to 10? What would it be? A 10, a 4, a 3, a
It would be even a six, so something slightly good, but not awesome.
So this is the thing. When I ask people this of their goals, the ones they made up, typically their typical response is 6 or 7. I'm like, you're bringing me your goals. I ask you, how lit up are you going to be? A 6 or a 7. Now, a 6 or a 7 is really a 1 or a 2 above neutral, right?
Yeah.
Because below 5, it starts getting bad. You start moving towards resentment and regret. And so now when we have these goals as individuals and as companies, and we look up and we're like, yo, how exciting is this to you? Right? And people are like 6 or 7. Okay, well, how are you going to get people to get excited about that? So now I can ask you the question and I can say, well, what is it going to take for you for this to be a 10 for you, for this revenue goal to be a 10 for you? And this is where now you can start to say, well, if we increase revenue by 20% while also having this kind of impact on our customers or on the community or on the world, while also making sure that we're taking care of our team in this way, while also making sure that we're working less, right? Now we start to craft a complete decision that is, it's not a goal, it's a decision. We are deciding that we are going to do our work in this way to produce this outcome. And that's how, when you get a room full of people, you just, I say that a good decision, you can tell it's a good one when it sounds like a toddler's run-on sentence. I have a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old. And if it's like, we're going to increase revenue by 20%, and we're also going to reduce our carbon footprint, and we're also going to reduce the number of hours that everyone has to work, and we're going to do that. Like, that's how you can tell it's an awesome decision, because it's connected to stuff that you actually care about. It's taking into account the problems that you are likely to face in pursuit of that goal, right? And then it gets our lizard brains, our limbic brains light up when we see it. So it's worth waking up every morning and coming into work because you're like, yeah, that's what I want. I want to do that. And then what we do is we flip it over to the prefrontal cortex, and that's when we go logic. That's when we start thinking about feasibility, and we say, okay, we've got all of these criteria in here. We've got the revenue criteria, we've got the impact to our community criteria, we've got this team culture criteria, so now what must happen in order to meet all of these criteria simultaneously, right? And that's where it makes planning so much easier, because there are only a handful of activities now that are going to grow revenue while also making it so that people are working less and can see their families more, while also making it so that there's this impact on the community. There are only a handful of activities. If you just say grow revenue by 20% and it's that big, there are so many options on the table, right? So it creates analysis paralysis, and it makes it so that you may end up doing something that's counter to one of your other goals, or doing something that turns off your workforce and has people disengaged because they're like, I don't want to I don't want to stay here until 8 o'clock every night to get our to hit our revenue target for what? While we're also hurting the community? No way. So that's how I believe you translate strategies. You make it you get everyone in the room and then you say, "Hey, what do we need to add to this to make it a 10 for you?"
Apollo, I love this. It's almost like you have cooked a new meal. I felt a little bit of the taste of objective and key results, the OKRs that some people use it with more a purpose-led and impact condiments on top, and the fact that there is almost like co-creation with that is human centric because it is
Yeah.
this thing that I was mentioning before. What is in it for me that we almost never find in the bullshit that we are fed sometimes in the corporate world. I love it. I like it. That cooking sounds delicious.
Well, it's funny because I was working out this morning and I was thinking about it as a cooking analogy. So it's like what most companies do is they say, "We're going to make a pie. We're gonna make 1,000 pies this year." And it's like, okay, if that's the directive you give, right? Hey, we're gonna make 1,000 pies. There are an infinite number of ways to make pies. There are an infinite kind of pies, right? So you could have some people thinking we're going to make a chicken pot pie. So they go off and they're buying a bunch of chicken, right? And you could have some people thinking we're making an apple pie. Some people think we're making a rhubarb pie. And so it opens all of these possibilities so much. And then people come back and these folks have got chicken and these folks have got sugar and these folks have got rhubarb and these folks have got blueberries, right? And then people are wondering why strategy is not working. It's like, hey, we said we were going to build 1,000 pies and now we've got all these. But when you put the criteria in there, right? Like, hey, we are building 1,000 apple pies and we want to make sure that, these things are gluten free and that they are only natural materials and only blah, blah, right? So the more, again, we make these decisions, as a toddler's run-on sentence, the clearer it becomes for everyone. So you don't have to have a million systems and processes and procedures. People can look at it and they can say, "Oh, I know what I need to do now. Don't go buy chicken because we're not making chicken pot pies."
That is true. Um, in your experience, what would you say is the single most critical step that an organization must take before they even begin to implement a new strategy? What is the thing that they always forget before they implement a new strategy?
Well, when you say implement, at what point are you talking about?
So we have a strategy, let's say, we are going to penetrate a new market. Let's go to Peru and enter into Peru. That's my strategy. Let's start by entering the market. Very often when we have this direction that we want to give in order to grow, there is maybe something that we companies always forget before saying, I want to go there.
Yeah. So you talked about OKRs, and I do have a little bit of an OKR approach, except I have criteria for the key results. So the objectives, one, like I would call an objective a decision. And
Mm,
typically in the OKR framework, objectives are clear, kind of like SMART goals, right? You're going to achieve X, you're going to go from X to Y by this time, right? And then the key results are you're going to do these three things. So for me, that objective is a decision, and that decision needs to be complex, right?
mm,
It needs to be complex, not analytically complex, but like throw the stuff in there that you think you're going to care about, right? And those things then become criteria. And so then when we go down to thinking about now, what are we going to do? The criteria that I apply we come up with two things. We call them must-haves and game changers. So now we've got this criteria, right? We want to go into Peru. We want to make this amount of money in the first 3 years. We want to We want to have this kind of brand reputation with this customer segment. We want to, again, all that stuff needs to go in your run on sentence.
Mm,
And then you say, okay, well, now rather than saying what can we do or what should we do or what could we do, we apply this, what must we do? Meaning we will not, this decision will not come to fruition unless we satisfy these things. So those are your must haves. And the cool thing is that there's this obsession with data today,
mm,
but people, when you get them in a room, can just look at stuff and know, right? So you get five experts in a room, you don't need to have a bunch of spreadsheets and data and tabulation. You can just get them and say, hey, what's absolutely going to be required in order for us to meet these criteria in Peru? And they can say, you know what, we're going to have to. And if we're going to do that, we're going to have to secure these kind of brand partnerships. There's no way we are doing this in this time frame without these brand partnerships, right? And then some other expert might say, really, you think it's impossible to do it without securing those brand partnerships? What if we did this instead? Right. And then it's like, oh, yeah, okay. So shoot. Okay. I guess we don't have to secure brand partnerships. And I'm glad that we had this conversation because that could have been really costly.
mm,
Right. And so, but what it is, you come up with those must haves. And I draw this on a bell curve and I have must haves down on the left tail. And then we're jumping over all the crap in the middle that I call the busy trap. And that's where the can and the should and the could live.
mm,
And we go to the game changers and say, what would damn near guarantee that we were successful in making this decision a reality in Peru uh, if we were to achieve these things? What would damn near guarantee it? And so, what a lot of organizations do is they don't apply any kind of test other than like what feels feasible to coming up with their activities. They just go like, oh, we can, or some other companies do this, or in the past we did that. But applying that test of what must you do, and then what are the things that if you were to achieve them, damn near guarantee that you're going to be successful. So that way you're cutting out a lot of that waste and the coulds and the shoulds. And if you look at that and you agree, and everyone agrees, yeah, these are the must-haves and these are the game changers, are we willing to invest in these must-haves? Are we willing to follow through on these must-haves? If you are, great. You go forward and pursue that decision. If you look at the must-haves and you're like, ooh, man, brand partnerships with the top three, whatever vendors in this industry, I don't want to put in the work to do that. Okay, cool. Well, then you're going to have to adjust your decision. You're going to have to adjust. Are you adjusting the time frame? Are you adjusting the revenue targets? Are you adjusting? And too often companies are thinking about feasibility when they're making the decision. They just need to make the decision and then say, what is it going to take in order to get there? And if you can tolerate all those things, then you can do it. If you can't tolerate all those things, then go back and adjust your decision.
mm. Apollo, the scenario that you have described, I have seen it live. In the wrong way, where you enter a market with certain expectations, and you don't want to enter a market and convince your senior management team that uh, you have low chances of success. So you start what we call bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
And
man.
probabilistic point of view with a distribution of what you say must have, can,
Yeah.
game changers, it becomes a mix of everything. Um,
Yeah.
and everything it looks like in the same, you pick your storyline without being objective. And that's
Yeah.
very often the problem because companies waste a lot of resources year one. Oh, we didn't succeed because we didn't have that budget. Yeah, but they never specified what you can get with the specific budget that you
Yeah,
have.
exactly.
What exactly you get, and I saw it, but and it goes across the board. It's nothing to do with one type of industry or one type of nationality of the company. I can tell you, I
Yeah.
have seen it all over. Lying, so the human aspect of fear, it's not lying, it's the fear, make
Yeah.
we tell bullshit to everybody and then we end up with wrong planning. But I love your
Absolutely.
I love this approach. It seems logic and quantifiable. What we can get with that, with the resources that we have now, could be quantifiable through your approach.
Well, and let me tell you where it came from. So I didn't go to a lot of school past fourth grade. And I had these dreams of either being on Saturday Night Live or being in the FBI because I watched a lot of TV growing up when I wasn't in school. And I watched a lot of X-Files and I watched a lot of Saturday Night Live and Mad TV. And so, um, the very first academic program that I graduated from wasn't elementary, middle, or high school. It was military intelligence school. And in military intelligence, we are taught to find, know, and never lose the enemy. That is part of the creed of the military intelligence analyst. And we owe the operations folks two things, essentially. It comes down to what is the most likely bad thing that could happen, and what is the most dangerous bad thing that could happen or that the enemy could do. So most likely and most dangerous. Most likely course of action, most dangerous course of action. And we have to put ourselves in the minds of the enemy force. Okay. And so what happens is when we're doing this, we're studying the enemy, we're studying the terrain. And we're saying, what is the most likely bad thing that's going to happen? What's the most likely, or what's the most dangerous bad thing that could happen? And then once we package this up, we toss it over to the operations folks who are planning the military operation, and they use our information to do what we call wargaming, right? And this is where you are essentially pulling a future dangerous scenario into the present where it cannot actually hurt you, right? And so you're saying, okay, well, if we deployed troops over here, we did this thing, what is the enemy most likely to do? What's the most dangerous thing they could do? Okay, well, we could mitigate that threat by taking these steps. And so now what are they most likely to do, right? And so we're able to actually walk through these kind of threat scenarios and the downsides before they're in your face. And so that is the thing. And then when I went into the FBI, I was doing the same thing, but it wasn't just talking about military environments. It was mortgage fraud. It was gangs. It was drugs. It was crimes against children. So putting yourself in the minds of these folks who are, who might be threatening the law or threatening people, and saying, okay, what's the most likely thing that they could do? What's the most dangerous thing they could do? So that's kind of baked into how I make decisions. The more excited I am about a decision, the harder I try to break it. The more I'm like, okay, wait, what's the worst thing that could happen? And what's the most likely bad thing that could happen? And most people are looking for ways that things can work. And there's a million ways that things can work. But if you just take a couple of, if you just take a pause and you think about what are the ways that this could go wrong, how might we mitigate those things? Can we actually follow through on mitigating these things? And can we live with the risk that's left over?
Apollo, I was just thinking loud in my head this story. So you brought the example of military forces taking decisions, and we draw a parallel with business decisions. Now, I find that there is a big difference here. I find that in the military decisions, it would be more about the level of accountability that you have because you have a skin in the game. If you don't take the right decision, somebody's going to die, either you or your pal. In businesses, the, the guys don't even lose shares if they fuck up, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So and that is something that is missing in many organizations, maybe more skin in the game. If you're taking the wrong decision to enter the market and you have been bullshitting your management, then you have to pay something. You have to own your decision. But this is not the case. I mean, I don't care if my bonus instead of being 25% is going to be 17. That's not a biggie. So I will have one car less. So whatever it is, it's different type of decisions. I understand it. I grasp it, and I remember that this is about this story about the skin in the game. I read the book from Nicholas Taleb, Nassim Taleb, Nicholas Nassim Taleb. mathematician. I think he's American, Lebanese origin. He wrote
Okay.
also Dark Swan, Black Swan, Black Swan. He's
Okay.
in probabilities and he's a little bit of a mathematician. Anyways, so the lack of skin in the game makes that there is a big difference about taking decisions in military versus business. What's your take on that?
I think that there is skin in the game. It's just a different game. I think most people are for they're looking for the greatest path to safety to protecting their income, right? I mean, there's skin in the game. It's very hard to lose your income in the military, right? It's probably easier to lose your life than lose your income in the military, and in a corporate job, that's not the case. It's
Yeah,
way easier to lose your income than it is to lose your life. And so the game is protect your income, right? And I think that there are massive amounts of accountability to that, and there are drawbacks to that being the central focus of work. And I think that um, what the companies that do the best job of thinking through things have the long view. They take the long view. Because if you ask, uh, Blockbuster Video or TiVo or any of these companies that were kind of on top and just don't exist anymore, it was a lot of that scared thinking, and that conservative will do a little bit more of what we've been doing. But if they had actually paused, so when you say there are no consequences, the thing that is hard about this is the consequences just tend to be delayed. The consequences tend to be delayed, but entire companies go away when you're not thinking through things and thinking about the risks and the threats in a kind of holistic and proactive way. You're not going to feel it this quarter necessarily, but that company just may cease to exist 2 or 5 or 10 years from now.
mm, that is totally true. In the When we think about leaders and how well they know themselves, is there any important dimension of self-awareness that is important in order to drive execution of these strategies? Is there like a list of things that I need to know about myself, about my way of executing? Otherwise, I'm going to bloody fail.
I think there are those things like, um, well, I think that the knowing what lights you up is really important. And I think that the kind of agility and resilience that's going to matter moving forward is that how do I how do I make a big, bold decision and unite people around it really quickly, and translate it into execution? And the reason why I think that is going to be more important moving into the future is because there's that stat. I love how you said my friends at McKinsey, and you said I'm being sarcastic. There's this stat that talks about the average age of the companies on the S&P 500, and that, whatever, 80 years ago it was 60 years or whatever, and 5 years ago it was something like 12 years, right?
Mm,
And so when we think about how quickly things are moving, how quickly industries are rising and falling and transforming, how quickly companies are rising and transforming and falling. And um, you have less and less time to optimize. You have less and less time to kind of like figure things out. And the consequences for waiting for failure before you pivot are getting to be bigger and bigger. And so I think that, and it's getting much harder to predict what is going to be feasible or safe, a
mm,
feasible choice or a safe choice. So I think that uh, people need to understand what is it that lights me up? What is it that's going to keep me getting out of bed every morning? And how do I bring that to my work? And how do I get other people excited about that and fold their excitement into it as well? So that way we can really get moving quickly, because we're probably going to have to change our minds and change our path and change everything 2 years from now, anyways, or maybe 2 weeks from now. So I think understanding what lights you up, really is really going to matter. Now, there are these lists of leadership traits and things that you need to have, like, emotional intelligence and accountability and like authenticity. All of these things are important, and understanding, how how well you kind of exemplify those things is important. But I think if you can just focus on how do I do more of what lights me up while producing value in the world, that you answer that question and you're going to be good for life. If you can't answer that question, you're going to be always subject to somebody else being able to identify the value in you and then try to move you along, right? And I think nobody is going to be able to identify your value better than you can. Hopefully, if you get good at it.
There is a strong correlation between the level of resilience that you need in order to execute a strategy and the identification of your values. You use the word "what lights you up." I love that word, but I know that behind that it is about values. It's not about just the happiness or the enjoyment that we have, like having an ice cream or having a good bottle of 30 years old Irish whiskey. It is not pleasure. It is really identifying values, and that goes beyond just the obvious influence that we have got from society, from our friends, and to clean it up, it is so damn difficult, Apollo. I have been iterating values, or maybe not my values, but more iterating the identification of really what it is that lights me up for years.
Yeah,
And it takes time, man.
it does. I mean, I think that the my values are courage, intention, inclusion, authenticity, and growth. So I have values, and I've had those values for probably 7 years, and I think I had four for a while, and then I had to add growth. But so I believe in values, but I also there's still something, like, they're definitely more fluffy and squishy and emotional than like objectives, right? But there's still something that is um, robotic or formulaic about even having values. And the reason why I say lights you up, how many podcast episodes do you have?
Uh, 180 or something like that.
180.
Hmm.
What are the chances that this is the last episode of your podcast?
Uh, that's a good one. What are the chances that this is the last one? I would say at around 5%, around the chances that I die of a heart attack or something.
Okay, so there we go. So this it's 5%, and you're banking that 5% on you dying of a heart attack. First of all, if there's a 5% chance that you die of a heart attack before you can film your next one, you need to go see a doctor, okay? Um,
You're
but
that's
that
right.
that right there, right, is a you saying that, like, I would have to die in order to not do a next one. That is an indicator to me. I don't know what your values are, but it's an indicator to me that this lights you up.
Mm,
It's an indicator to me that you like having these conversations and that you're going to do it. So, like, how much resilience, and you're creating value in the world, right? So, how much resilience do you have to have in order to film another episode of your podcast? Not a ton of resilience, right? It's a
mm.
thing that you love to do that lights you up, that you are bringing value to the world. And so, if I asked you what your values are, it would sound kind of robotic. And it's like, well, how do I apply that to an actual situation? But me saying, you making the statement, somebody would have to kill me to not do another episode of this podcast, is an indicator that of what's going to light you up, right? And so, So that's what I think most people don't give themselves the permission to film the episodes, to do the thing, to come up with the idea at work because they're not we're taught to disregard the thing that lights us up and to save that for after work or to save that for, whatever. And it's like, no, 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 that is the actual thing. If you can just do the thing that lights you up, you don't need willpower. You don't need resilience. You're driven by the desire to see this thing exist in the world.
Hmm. But sometimes you need somebody who will take your face and will tell you, this is what you need to do because you really wanted it. Stop being afraid and no, don't save it for afterwards. There is no afterwards. It is now. Want to be happy? Do it now. And sometimes it takes like a little bit of help to have somebody to help you out on that. And by
Absolutely.
the way, Apollo, I know that this somebody, sometimes we call it a coach. And that's my next question because I wanted to ask you about coaching. In the area of driving execution, is is it enough to have a coach? Is it has it fulfilled the promise? And are we doing it correctly in order to help a CEO, a senior executive be good in execution, or there is some limitations?
Wow.
Just criticize,
Hmm.
man.
Yeah. I think that coaches, I mean, I'm a coach. I coach people. So I think coaches can be really useful. Yeah, this is a tough one. Well, okay, let me just flat out say coaches. Yes. Yes to coaches. Absolutely. I have right now three different coaches that I am working with, like that are coaching me.
Mhm.
Okay. So big believer in coaching. I think um, understanding what kind of a coach you need and specifically what are the expectations of your work with the coach. It's so important. I think what is more important is for organizations to have coaching skills. And so when I'm working with folks, whether it's an individual or a team, I like to bring these frameworks, like these decision-making frameworks, for instance, right? Saying like, hey, well, if this is the big decision, how well, it's funny because you told me you were going to ask me this question, and now you're asking me, and it's so tough. So I'm like the big decisions guy. So I think the solution to every problem in an organization is big, bold, clear decisions. Okay. So sometimes folks will come to me and they'll say, I've got some communication issues and I got to figure out how to communicate better. Or I've got to figure out how to communicate this issue, or I've got to create a comms plan. 99 times out of 100, I have found it is not a communication plan problem. It is a decision problem. And so those are kinds of things that sometimes only an external coach can help you see, right? The reason why you're having a hard time finding the wording to communicate this thing is because you haven't fully decided what the thing even is and what are the impacts and what are the guardrails and all of this. And so once you make a big bold decision, then it becomes really easy to communicate it. I was watching a video on the CEO of NVIDIA who was saying, I don't have one-on-ones. He's like, we'll do email updates. I don't have one-on-ones with my direct reports. He was like, if we're going to talk about something strategic, why would I communicate it to one person? And like everything else. So like I can tell that the CEO of NVIDIA is laying out big, huge decisions, clearly, right? Like big, huge decisions. And so people can say, oh, that's where we're going. All right, I know this needs to stop and this needs to start, right? And so the communication becomes almost automatic when the decision is really big. Same thing with accountability. Oftentimes, people will go and they're like, yeah, we got to work on this person's job description. We got to work on their role description. And so they're going in and literally going into the job description and they're trying to tweak it when it's like, wait, what is this team here to accomplish? Right? What skills does this person bring? What falls under the category of what lights this person up in a way that is going to naturally and intrinsically deliver on this decision, right? Let's start there. But if you have an uninspiring or an unclear big decision about what's supposed to happen, then of course you're going to have people swerving into each other's lanes and people getting territorial and not understand. So for me, I think that, the value that I bring as a coach is I am not inside of your organization. And that's the value that all coaches bring, is that when you're not inside, you can come in and you can be like, why is that like that? And then when people explain to you why it's like that and they hear themselves speak out loud, they're like, oh man, that's kind of stupid. Right. And so my way of, once they get to that point of like, I don't know why we do that. Or, okay, we're doing it because of this, but that's not a good reason because, if we don't fix this, then we're not going to be successful. So that's when I help people get into that decision making space and make big, bold decisions that are going to create clarity.
Apollo, what I like is that you were very open to say I have three coaches. And to tell you the truth, I share your opinion that one person, one coach is not enough. There is, for different areas of your life, you may have different type of sounding boards, and you cannot
Yeah.
expect everything from one single person. We don't do that with our partners. Why would we do it with with our coaches? And what is wrong, in fact, in the coaching area, is not the concept of coaching, is maybe the fact that certain coaches might not be that awesome. And is
Yeah.
that, and we sometimes we set up our expectations. Ah, yeah, maybe that's it, what I can expect from coaching. No, there is awesome, and there is people at
Yeah.
different levels, and it's not about sometimes even a discussion about pricing. It is more about specialties that we need to fill, but we should not settle with whoever is
Yeah.
just giving you bullshit crap, and he's not helping you move from where you are now to the next step. Because a good coach has this trick that makes you move, and well, it depends on you, but he has
Yeah.
understood the trigger so that you can do more than the day before. That's that's amazing, and it's a good way to see a little bit the future of coaching. We need it as human beings because we are really bad at just thinking on our own, at
Yeah.
reflecting, uh, position ourselves outside of what we say or what we do, and be like a spectator in a movie and looking at the movie and saying, ah, here I did something completely stupid. We are really bad at that. Thank you very much, Apollo, for this conversation. I love the fact that you are capable of explaining the complexity of human beings in simple words. I love the fact that your experience has made it that you are a fully rounded person to don't think frameworks and strategies, but more real actions. And it's clarity. It is. I will have to use this coaching word, clarity. What the hell? I wasn't
Yeah.
expecting myself
Yeah.
using that word. I'm going to hate
Absolutely.
myself tonight. Apollo, how can people reach you out to ask you questions, to understand a little bit more about your background, the value that you bring to the world? How can they reach you out in the easiest manner?
Oh, thanks for asking that. Yeah, my LinkedIn is like my TikTok. I love LinkedIn. And I'm in this kind of really exploratory phase right now where I'm just I'm having a lot of conversations with folks. So if uh if you want to get into a conversation or you just want to follow along, then please find me on LinkedIn. It's Dr. Apollo Emeka at on LinkedIn. So that's the best place to find me.
That's great. I will put definitely the link to your profile. Apollo, thank you very much for this awesome, enlightening conversation. Thank you. Have a great
My
day.
pleasure. Thank you so much. You too.